All right, so I said we were going to tackle a serious topic here on the podcast this week, and that's exactly what we're doing. And I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, I'm going to say that a couple times in this podcast, so just be aware of that. I was originally not going to talk about this, but considering the fact that it has gained traction in the community, and I do have some thoughts I'd like to share, I feel like it is important to discuss. And the reason why I was not going to discuss it originally is because it is a point of controversy. It's a point of that's really what it is. It's a point of controversy within the community, and I did not want to get in the middle of that, but a friend of mine, or a former classmate and friend of mine, he's still friends with me, we still talk occasionally, who is a listener of this podcast, he knows who he is, reached out to me a couple weekends ago, and said, I would like to hear you talk about this, as he didn't really understand it. I really kind of don't understand it, but I'm going to summarize it for you and give you maybe help you better understand this topic, so we can both learn together. And he wanted me to talk about it. He wanted my thoughts. He wanted just an overall discussion on this. So we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, let's we'll jump right in here. But real quick, I do want to mention I did post that bonus episode I talked about last week. It was just up on Saturday. If you haven't got a chance to listen to it, go check it out. I'm walking in it, and I talk about how walking is just more than physical exercise. So I wanted to just I just wanted to say that at the top of the show today, top of this week's episode. So now, without further ado, let's get into this week's topic, which can be controversial, and I have a lot to say about it. But we're going to summarize it first. So without further ado, here we go. Okay, so what is this topic about? This topic is about my alma mater, Southside High School. It's located in a very rural town in Pennsylvania. Quick Google search, you'll find it. Just Google Southside High School, PA. You'll see it. It's in the town where I grew up. And I've told you on this podcast before, if you're not a frequent listener, I've talked about on this podcast how this town that I grew up in is very rural, but it's also very stuck in its older ways. It's stuck in the past. Well, this is kind of the old ways colliding with the new ways, and it's not faring well for all involved. What's it about, really? Well, I do have a summary, and it's from Facebook, that I'm going to talk about it, and that I've found this summary. I don't know who it's from, but it is in a Facebook group that I am in, with alumni who are either allies of the LGBTQ community or who are in the LGBTQ community. So this is a perfect summary to what has happened. So we have to go back to September, October time. So that's where we're going to start with this. A memo was released instructing the staff to refer to students by their preferred pronouns. Okay, not necessarily a bad thing. It's 2023. That's kind of the way we're in right now. By the way, before we go too far ahead, I do want to say that I'm going to be as objective and as fair as I can on this. I have opinions, but I'm saving them till the end so you can get both sides of this argument, because it's a very controversial thing, and we got to get both sides in and got to be objective and fair. But like I said, I do have my opinions. I will share them at the end of the podcast. So, as I said, back in September, October, there was a memo released to the staff instructing them to refer to their students, or to refer to the students by their preferred pronouns. Okay, again, like I said, this is 2023. That's kind of the thing now that we're doing, that pronouns are a bigger deal than they were when I was in high school. Full disclosure, I will mark 10 years since I graduated high school. That will be next June. Not this coming June, next June, 2024 is when I would have graduated high school. 2014 is when I graduated, but next year will mark 10 years. Just want to throw that out there too. Now, one of the high school science teachers who I had, again, full disclosure, I had this teacher and had no clue he was religious. That's how much I knew about this. I had no clue he was overly religious. It didn't surprise me, but I mean, I had the feeling he kind of was, but I did not know he was until the whole situation started. Now, one of the high school science teachers who, like I said, I had, sent a letter to all staff indicating he could not obey this memo as it violated his religious beliefs, that it would be a lie to refer to students, quote unquote lie, to refer to students by something other than their birth gender. And this teacher was placed on leave. He was actually suspended. He was placed on administrative leave. Some say he was suspended. Some said he was on leave. I seen this whole thing blow up on Facebook. Trust me, it was not pretty. And the reason he was placed on leave wasn't for misgendering a student, but for sending this entire letter to the staff. Which I agree with. He should not have sent it to the staff. So I agree with that part of the suspension, but a lot of people took it the wrong way and misunderstood and thought it was because of this. Okay? Which is fair, especially in this small town with very conservative ways. It's a politically conservative town. It's got nothing to do with politics. I'm aware of that. But, politically driven conservative town, they're going to think that way. Trust me, I get it. And nevertheless, the student prompted a protest, or this prompted a protest. Students walked out of class. They held signs outside the school, and this was on television. This was on local television. They did a report on KDKA television here in Pittsburgh. I seen this, and I was like, oh, geez. Bad publicity for the school, folks. Not good. And hundreds of people attended a board meeting, and I do want to, and this was also said in this summary, that before the board meeting, anti-LGBT comments and threats skyrocketed online and at the school. Now, I'm an outsider. This was not an issue 10 years ago when I was in high school. This was not an issue, having threats like this against the LGBT students. This was not a problem. 10 years later, it is. It's a whole different culture. So that's why I'm kind of on the outside looking in on this, okay? At this board meeting, the school's Gay Straight Alliance was attacked. Many suggested it should be banned from the school, which I don't agree with. Students were accused of using litter boxes at school. There were multiple attacks against LGBT students, including by name, and the crowd was verbally abusive towards those that spoke up in disagreement with their views. The board then voted to reinstate this teacher and rescinded the memo. Now there is a pronoun committee that is being formed at the school. And it has some community members, some board members, has had a few meetings, 3 or 4. And it was designed to balance different points of view to come up with a compromise policy in the community. Now, as I said in my episode last week, I said I love how people that are overly religious literally have come out of the woodwork now because of this. This was much ado about nothing until this whole thing started. This whole thing started, and it was just a bonfire, folks. It was bad. I mean, the school is still getting somewhat negative publicity from this. There are articles in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Beaver County Times, the local newspaper here, that I will include in the podcast description, in the episode description of this episode. So you can read it for yourself. You can get a fair judgment and a fair point of view on this issue. And that's really that. That's really what you can do. And really, it's just a mess. It's just a mess right now. There was a board meeting last week. It was not good. And by the way, there's also an article from WESA, the NPR affiliate here in Pittsburgh. I will also include that in the episode description so you can read that for yourself and get another look at what's going on. Now, the religious people, they're saying their beliefs are being challenged and all this other stuff. It's a whole thing. It really is. And like I said, I don't know why they're making a big deal out of this now. Again, I have plenty of opinions on this, but I'm saving them till the end so you can get a better idea of what we're talking about here. There is a problem at the school right now. There's a problem at the school, no doubt, and like I said at the top of this podcast, I still don't think I understand it completely. Not a lot of people outside of this issue do really understand it. I mean, I get one side, but the religious folks, I don't understand. And let me just say this. Another thing, full disclosure. I consider myself spiritual. I'm not overly religious. I do pray sometimes. I do believe in God. No, I'm not going to discount that. I'll go full disclosure, but I also believe that people should live and let live, so to speak. You live the way you want to live. So be it. I'm in that part there. So, like I said, it's a whole thing. It's a whole mess. Like I said, I'm going to include 3 articles from the Post-Gazette, from the Beaver County Times, and from the NPR affiliate in town. I'm going to include all 3 of those in the episode description so you can better read and maybe get a better understanding, better than I can, of this whole situation. Now, some people have wanted my thoughts on this. And some have wanted my thoughts. And here's what I really have to say. Okay, first of all, in the rural town that I live in, which I have said this many times on the podcast, if you're not like most of the people in the town, you're not going to have a good time trying to fit in. It's still stuck in the past. It's still stuck in the 1960s. Believe me, when I tell you, I know this firsthand. I am not a country boy. I'm not somebody who wears plaid all the time or wears cowboy boots. I don't do that because that's not who I am. Maybe I would have done that 15, 20 years ago. I don't now because I know who I am, and being a country boy is not who I am. Being country, that's exactly what this town is. It's very rural. You're supposed to kind of fit this country persona type that I don't agree with. I've been an oddball my entire life. I'm still weird. You know what? I embrace my weirdness. I don't care what other people think. Okay? You can love me or you can hate me. I really don't care. But I'm going to be who I want to be. And that's really all these kids want, is to be included and have a more inclusive environment in school. And what the adults in this situation need to do, both on the religious side of things and the LGBTQ side of things, is come to an agreement and say, this is not about us. This is not about our beliefs. This is not about our views. It's about the kids. And that's really what it is. It's about the kids. It's about not just the straight kids, but the gay kids, the transgender kids. It's about all of them. That's what this is supposed to be about. If you feel like your views are being challenged in any way, maybe you need to go somewhere else. And for that teacher who was placed on leave and then was reinstated because of the outcry, if once again, if your beliefs feel like they're being challenged, maybe you need to go somewhere else. Maybe you're in the wrong line of work. It's possible. Okay. Listen, like I said, I had this teacher. I did. I had this teacher in high school. He's an all right guy. I'm not gonna say otherwise. He was an all right guy. I liked him. But but I will say this, if he ever pushed his religious views on me, I would have left that class almost immediately. Um I wouldn't have had the courage to do it, but I would have said something eventually because I don't want my religious views being being forced on me. And that's another thing too. We should not be pushing religious views or the views of the LGBTQ plus community onto our kids. Let them live how they want to live. Don't try to force this issue on us, so to speak. And both sides are not doing a good job of that. Now, do I believe there are two genders, only two genders? Yes. However, if there's scientific proof otherwise, I would love to be proven wrong. And I know people are going to, take my words out of context and saying I'm being homophobic. You do that, that's on you. But I know what I believe in. I know where I stand. If you don't like it, well, then that's a you problem, quite frankly, because I know where I stand. I know what I believe. I believe that, live and let live. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you want to be straight, be straight. If you want to be bisexual, be bisexual. No one's stopping you. Yes, you might get ridiculed for it, but that's just the society we live in, especially in the very rural and politically conservative town that I have lived in for most of my life. That's just the way it is. And listen, homophobia, racism, that has run rampant in that town for as long as I can remember. But towards the end of my high school days, I will say this. Towards the end of my high school days, there were more black kids coming into the school, and they were being accepted. And I accepted them. I was not hateful towards them. I will also say this, back in 2015, when I began my journey, if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, I began my journey of finding out who I really was and working on myself and becoming the best person I could be. But very early on in the process, I made a post on my personal Facebook page that got a lot of attention. It was another similar school district just south of this school district that had an anti-gay day. And you know what I said? I said I supported it. And the comments, you would not believe the comments and the feed, or not even the feedback, the backlash I got from that post. Oh my gosh, it was bad. It was awful. But 8 years later, I learned from that post. I learned never to post anything like that again. Now, I did post more in 2016, but everything has since been taken down. Okay? I'm not like that anymore. Once again, I will continue to say it. I believe in live and let live. You be who you want to be. You love who you want to love. It should not matter. It does not matter. I've made that point very clear, and I'm going to continue to make it very clear because it's important. This is 2023. This is not 1965 anymore. We're living in different times. People have mental illness, and people love either the same gender or love both genders. Or sometimes people change genders. That's just the way it is in 2023. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And the religious folks have to get used to that, whether they like it or not. I don't believe, and this is just me, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I believe that God lets us or wants us to be authentic. And that's my whole philosophy, is being authentic, being who exactly who you are. We just talked about it in the last episode of this very podcast. We talked about living authentically. And that's, I think, what God wants us to do, is to live authentically. Maybe I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, then again, that's your opinion. We all have an opinion. That's why I'm sharing it at the end of this podcast. It's because we are we're we're all different people. We all have different opinions. If we all had the same opinion, it wouldn't be a good society. Um, but to anybody who says this is about politics, you need to shut the hell up and stick it where the sun don't shine, okay? Because this has got nothing to do with politics. This has got to deal with human rights. This is a human rights issue, really. And like I said, at the end of the day, what's happening at my alma mater has nothing to do with your religious views or your views on the LGBTQ community. This has everything to do with the kids at that school and having an inclusive environment where they can learn, make friends, and just enjoy their time there. That's really what this is. It's really what it boils down to. And I think we're still a ways away from total inclusion, but this is a good step in the right direction to help this school be more inclusive to everybody. I want to take example from my sport, NASCAR, one of my favorite sports that I've grown up watching ever since I was a kid. They've had this racial stereotype of being in the South, being all white, of their fans being older white people with, this Republican background, being conservatives. They're trying to change that image. How are they doing that? They're getting rid of the Confederate flag. They're bringing in more minority owners. Michael Jackson, or not Michael Jackson, excuse me, Michael Jordan. Chicago Bulls great. He owns a team in NASCAR now. Pitbull. He's from Mexico. Pitbull co-owns a team in NASCAR now. Emmitt Smith co-owns a team in NASCAR now. NASCAR is one of the most diverse sports in the country at the higher level, but its fan base is not. That's why they're trying to be more inclusive to everybody who loves the sport. I've seen more people of color and more people of different backgrounds in NASCAR than I've ever seen in my life. That's a great start in the right direction of total inclusion. And that's what this needs to be here, of people who are included and who just really want to learn. And this goes for the teachers too. They want to be included too in this. And I think that school needs to be more inclusive. Needs to be like our society, really, and be more inclusive to everybody, not just one particular part. So I commend what everybody's doing at this school for trying to make it more inclusive. But in terms of the people who are overly religious, who thinks their beliefs are being tested or being challenged, I think this is just a way for them to be kind of like shown in the spotlight here for no reason. That's just my personal opinion. And that's what they want, and they're getting it. And it's taking away from the most important part of the issue here. And that is to have a more inclusive environment for all students at that school. And that's what needs to come first in my mind. So, yeah, this was a tough episode to get through, but I thank you all for listening. If you've made it this far, I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you heard, we could talk about more topics. That's what we do on this podcast. We talk about serious stuff. We talk about things that matter. I talk about what I've learned in my brief young life. I'm only I'll be 27 here in about a month, and I've learned a lot that I'm sharing with you. That's really why I'm doing this, to help out in any way that I can and to talk things through. So if you enjoyed what you heard, please let me know. You can reach out via email, tjtpodcast, podcasts @gmail.com. You can follow TJT Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Just search TJT Podcast either place. You'll be able to find it. As I said, you'll be able to read the articles I mentioned in this podcast in the episode description. I will be sure to put them there so you can get a better understanding. Because like I said, I'm still not completely understanding of the subject, but I'm getting there, and I want to understand it. So, that'll do it for me for this week. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all again next week for another episode of I've Got Something to Say. In the meantime, take care, and I'll see you next week.